Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. This is Crystal from Crystal with Love XO. And I am coming to you guys to talk a little bit about how do you know if you're being too picky? How do you know if you're being too picky? I'm going to wait a few minutes and hopefully some more people will join us. I started doing Sunday evening conversations and I stopped for a while. So I have to start doing these again. We're obviously talking about the book, Dear Alpha Female. It's not him, it's you. So these are conversations based on the book. And I thought after seeing so many women and so many conversations on social media where women are saying that they're too picky, I was like, okay, let's have a conversation about this. Because I think that a lot of us are saying that we're using the word picky when it really is just that we're making sense and not accepting BS. So if you guys can hear me, make sure that you drop an XO in the chat. If you are watching this broadcast later, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel from Christal XO. And I think that we're going to start to have these conversations. Like I said, I wanted to do these with the book. And you guys know I do interviews every week. We have interviews tomorrow coming up with the ladies from Bell Collective. And that's an interesting show on OWN. Also, I have to mention, I'll be remiss if I did not mention, if you guys know what I do in real life, I've been a public relations professional for almost 20 years. And so my favorite clients, the clients I've had the longest, TLC had a documentary that aired on Lifetime and A&E on Saturday night. If you did not see it, if you did not see TLC Forever, please check it out. It was an amazing documentary. I'm so proud of them. And it's just been a blessing to be a part of that project for so long. They're so authentic. And it was just a beautiful kind of like overall look at their careers and their lives. I grew up a huge TLC fan and then moved to Atlanta and had the opportunity to work with them since about 2006. And so anyway, I just want to suggest before we get into this conversation, if you have not seen TLC Forever, it is streaming on, I believe, Hulu as well. So you can look at probably like on demand on Lifetime, A&E, or Hulu and check it out. Come back and let me know what you think. I did I put up a couple of posts about it on the channel. So anyway, let me know what you think. I enjoy working with powerful women, and I can't think of another example of more powerful, authentic women that really take their platform seriously than TLC. So shameless plug for what I do in real life. But getting back to Dear Alpha Female, it's not him, it's you. And this whole idea of being picky. So I've seen women say this, social media continues to have this conversation about relationships, right? And so I was watching, actually I was watching the Kendra G show. I've worked with, done interviews, had clients interview with Kendra years ago because she's been on she was on WGCI for years. Congrats to her on all that she's doing. But I was watching her Singled Out show and she was asking a young lady what were her flaws. And it seems like a lot of women have a hard time coming up with their flaws. I think that's a whole nother issue, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And so she listed one of her flaws as being too picky. And so when Kendra pushed and asked her, what did that mean? What did her being too picky meant? She said, well, if you're not doing XYZ, I get bored and move on, and I'm quick to move on. And so I thought, you know what, let me have a conversation about the word picky, because I think a lot of times, and that's not the only time I've seen that reference, where women will say, I know that I'm picky. And then when you ask them, what does that mean? They'll say, well, I have to, I make, if I get approached by a guy, he has to take me out. Well, that's not being picky. That's just having good sense. That's just having standards and having, knowing that you deserve to be treated like a lady. That's not being too picky. Hey, Marriott, thank you so much for joining. Good to see you. We are talking about what it means to be too picky, because In this book, Dear Alpha Female, It's Not Him, It's You, I talk about the things that make it you, right? The things that make it you. So I want to give an example of what being picky is, and then talk about what not being picky is. I remember when we did Chili's first show, What Chili Wants, on VH1 years ago, and she had this list. And a lot of people gave her a lot of slack about the list because, she had six-pack abs. She had, God-fearing, of course, first, family-oriented. And then she wanted someone that, was in the same type physical shape as she was. And a lot of people, and then she wanted someone that didn't eat pork and didn't eat, badly, because she doesn't do that. And a lot of people said, well, she was being too picky. I think there were bloggers that said, if she were to get this guy, it would have to be Jesus, because no one was like that. And I'm like, but really, there weren't anything on the list that was crazy. It was literally things that she is. So to say that I want someone that would be equal to myself, or someone that I would be able to have things in common with, people were saying that was too picky. Coincidentally, she is in love now with a man that has everything on the list. So I just want to make sure I challenge the women that listen to the channel, and even the men that listen, to know that, number one, there is no such thing. There is a such thing as being too picky, but it's not if you are requesting if you're requesting what you're bringing to the table, right? Now, also, if what you're requesting and what you consider being picky is just things that you need in order to date. So saying that a man has to take you out, he has to reach out to you on a consistent basis. I've heard women say, well, the guys say I'm picky because if he doesn't call me, if he doesn't talk to me in a week, that I'll, write him off. That's not being picky. That's actually just requiring a person to actually be intentional with you, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Now, if you're saying that you want someone, I remember I have a girlfriend that said that she didn't like the way this guy was eating his potato chips, or she didn't like a particular pair of shoes that he wore. Now, that may be being too picky, right? Those are examples of being too picky. I also think if you, and I've seen this on Kendra G's show as well, a woman will call in and having 4 kids, and you want someone that doesn't have children, or you want someone that has only 1 child, but you have more than that. That's not being picky. That's being crazy. Like that doesn't make any sense. But I think if you want someone that treats you right, you want someone that shows consistent interest. I think if you want someone that is a compliment to you, to what you already have, I don't think that's being too picky. I think that is not the correct definition of being picky. Being picky is when you are picking people apart based on things that don't matter, right? So if I used to, and I put myself out here all the time, not because I want to tell you guys all my business, but because I definitely, want to let people know that I am not perfect. I've made a lot of mistakes. I used to have this thing about names. Like, I felt like, a certain name, if a guy didn't have a certain type of name, that it wouldn't just be a good fit for me. That was probably a little crazy, right? I just had this thing, like thought certain names were cool and certain names were not. That's ridiculous, right? But, and even I will also say, at one point, I, had a height of a pretty rigid height requirement. And then I started to learn that that doesn't really make a lot of sense when you consider what real partnership is about, and what the benefits of a relationship are. If he is, 6'3" or not, doesn't really matter. If I'm attracted to him, yes, but as far as him being, I wanted him to have this cool name and to have like muscles and be this certain height. Now, I ended up, God ended up sending me a guy that was the height that I wanted, but I did open up, and I want to make sure that I'm clear about my own process. It was not, I did get, God did give me the desires of my heart, but before that, I had decided that those superficial things were not important to me, and I was going to date with intention. But I also, if a guy was not showing me that he was interested and making an effort to court me, I would not go out with him. And that was not being picky. That was just being realistic to what I knew was going to work for me, right? And so I think when we're thinking about what is picky and what's not, it's not too picky. I think also society wants to tell Black women that we shouldn't have the audacity to ask to be treated a certain way, right? Now, I know what you guys are going to say. I got a lot of flack on my channel for not agreeing with the statements that Ebony K. Williams made. And people were saying, oh, Christal, Black women deserve to have what they want. And I'm not saying that she did not. What I was saying is that the way she presented her conversation was a turnoff. But I don't even want to go back down that road, because that conversation is tiring. But I think that Black women deserve to have a partner that appreciates and compliments them, right? I think that there's nothing wrong with saying that you have to step up and treat me a certain way. If you want me to take interest, if you want me to be open, you have to put the effort in. Like El Fran says, you want a man who's going to make an effort. Absolutely. My daughter said that she met a guy and he was so hateful to her because she has a family that are very supportive of her. And I told her, I said, well, if a person is complaining about things that are positive for you, a supportive family is a plus, right? I know that I hear a lot of women say that the men that they meet are complaining about the fact that they have a successful career. That to me is a red flag. And that means before you get into the relationship, there's nothing wrong with saying this is not a good fit for me, because the right man is going to put in effort. The right man is going to be happy that you have things in your life that are successful and healthy. I'm not saying that if you are flaunting and bragging about your job and throwing it in people's face, that's something else. But if he's uncomfortable with the fact that you have things in your life that you've been successful with, or things in your life that are feeding into you, then that's a huge red flag that man is not the one for you. And when it comes to business, one of my mentors told me to fail fast, right? And I remember thinking, like, that sounds crazy to say to someone, you should fail fast. But the reason that in business they tell you to fail fast is so that you're able to pivot, right? And that you're able to realize what is not a good business venture and pull out of it before you sink more money and time into it. Actually, time can be worse than money, because you cannot get that back. You can make the money back, but time is hard to get back. And so I feel like when we're dating and when you're getting to know people, you need to fail fast. You need to be honest with yourself, right? And you need to be honest with the other person. And if it's something that is not a good fit, there's nothing wrong with getting out of that situation quickly. I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make is thinking to themselves, like, we trick ourselves into being in the situations that are not good for us. Oh, I'm probably being too picky. If I want to be taken out on a date. Oh, I'm probably being too picky if I'm not okay with the fact that he does not, that, we planned a date a week ago and I haven't heard from him. No, that's not being too picky. And if you fail fast in situations like that and realize, okay, this person, for what I want, this person isn't showing up in that way for me, then I need to move on. And I would say to anyone out here listening, and anyone that's going to listen to this later, the biggest thing that you can do for yourself is not to become involved and embroiled with people that are not for you. When you end up laying down with someone, spending time with them, getting emotionally invested, it is much harder to move on. And you also, I feel, you slow down the process of finding the right person, because now you have another person that you've connected with. You have another person that you're probably going to have to spend some time getting over. And this just becomes a complicated thing that you could avoid if you fail fast, right? It's not about being picky. It's about saying, hey, this is not a good fit for me. This is not what I'm asking for. Someone said in the chat earlier that they would write down, okay, Colton James Hodge says, what are going through now for me in this process of writing down how much do I want? How much does love want? Or how much do I want? I think that that's a beautiful thing to do, because, and I think it's very helpful. That's also why in this book, I have an area for journaling, right? The title of the book is, yes, Dear Alpha Female, It's Not Him, It's You, but it's also an interactive devotional designed to help you attract the love you deserve. And the devotional part does have allows for journaling, because I feel like when you write something down, it's just like I said with a business plan. But of course, this book and my conversations are really for career driven women or women that are results oriented. And so in that, I can say to you all, like, when you write something down when it comes to business, you're able to prioritize it. You're able to, it kind of sends a message to your own brain that this is something that's serious, right? And so I think when you write down, yes, Colton, write down what you want. And I think also a lot of times we don't really know what we want. Like we think we do because, you just think, okay, I know what I want. But if you actually get asked the question, you really, sometimes it stumps people and they really aren't able to articulate it. You will not get what you want unless you are able to articulate what you want. And so I encourage all of you to write out a list. I know people gave Chili a hard time for it. But I write down things that I want when it comes to business. I do a vision board when it comes to my life. And I wrote down what I wanted in a relationship. Right. And I think that was key because once I was able to actually sit down, and I don't think you should do that with anyone else. I think that should be like something that you do with yourself, because when you're with other people, a lot of times what they want or what they want for you can get mixed up in that. I think it's important to know what you really want and what you really need individually, and not from a standpoint of listening to other people and kind of being persuaded by them. So I think it's important to write everything that you want in a relationship down, from how you want to be, right? To how you want to be treated, what you want that person to bring into your life. And I also think, it's important to know your flaws and your weaknesses along with your strengths. So many times we focus on our strengths and we don't also figure out who are we, because when you meet that person, this is why a lot of relationships fail. When you meet a person and you get into a relationship is a reflection of you, right? A relationship is like taking a mirror, the kind of mirror that shows your pores. You guys know how you look at a mirror, like those when we're putting on our makeup, we have those mirrors that are really close to you. And then there's the mirror that's a little bit further back. But the one that's really close, you can see like every single blemish, every single imperfection in your face. And it's like, I know when I go in to put makeup on, I usually put that mirror away because I don't like looking into something so close, because like I said, you can see every imperfection. And a lot of times we don't want to look at that, right? Relationships are that magnifying mirror. And a lot of times things that we have hid from ourselves, when you get into a relationship with someone else, those things become very apparent. And so if you don't know who you are, and you don't know your own flaws and weaknesses, when you get into that relationship and that magnifying mirror is placed in front of your face, you're going to have a moment where you want to back up, or where it causes tension. And I think that is why so many people, when they get into something, whether the other person is a fit or not, it ends up crashing and burning, because you really haven't addressed and become comfortable with your flaws. If one of your flaws includes what you think about someone else, then you don't really know what your flaws are. You cannot, if I ask you what your flaws are and you tell me, well, listen, I'm just too nice to people and I get taken advantage of, you have flipped it over and you're talking about the other person. If you are not able to talk about what it is about you that you need to work on, and all of us have something that we need to work on. Every single one of us. If you feel like there's nothing that you need to work on, then you probably don't need to be in a relationship, because you're not self-aware. So that's a whole thing. But as far as being picky, now I do think there is a situation where sometimes we can be picky, but I think we're picky when we're focused on the wrong things. If you're focused on the exact height the person is, what type of family they come from, and I think it's important to know what's going on in the person's family, what they've dealt with. But I one time had a guy say, well, I don't want to date a woman that came from a single parent family. I understood why he said that. But when you make rash judgments about people and you generalize, I think that could be a problem. I don't even know if it's being picky, but it's definitely narrowing your perspective to where you will block out a lot of people that could be amazing for you, right? So I think it's better to focus on where people are in life now as opposed to where they came from. There are a lot of people that were spoiled and had all the money in the world growing up. And when they get older, they lose it all because they have no discipline. Where some people, come from very humble beginnings, but they're very disciplined and they're able to be very, make a lot of money, and they're good with money. They have good practices and good habits. There are a lot of people that make a lot of money money and have really bad habits. So anytime a woman says, I want a man that makes six figures, I always wonder, like, do you want a man that makes six figures and is also good with those six figures? Because if so, you may want to be specific about that. You may want to write that down, because you can meet a person that makes $175,000 a year, and if their spending habits equal $160,000 a year, you're going to have a problem. And trust me, that is the case with a lot of people. A lot of people that make a lot spend a lot, you know, and then there are a lot of people that don't make that much but are very smart when it comes to money. So these are things that, you know, the social media conversation doesn't always address. I see people talking about what they want the other person to have, but very little about the behavior and the lifestyle patterns that they want from that person. I think those are things that we need to be writing down. We need to be paying attention to, outside of just, I want him to have this and I want him to do this for me. I would challenge you all to write down what you want to give to a relationship as opposed to what you want to get from a relationship. There is this idea that, like, you know, I want to get into a relationship because it's going to be easier for me. It's going to make my life easier. And I can say, you know, there are many places that my life became easier when I got married, but there are also ways that I learned that I needed to be able to serve. Chris Rock says that very, very adequate, very eloquently in one of his stand-ups. It's like, marriage is about serving, you know, and if you aren't ready to serve, you probably aren't ready to be married. And I think a lot of us are looking at it, or a lot of people look at relationships as something that they can, you know, I can get her to do this for me, I can get him to do this for me. But are you looking and excited about what you can do for your partner? That's something that you definitely need to keep in mind. I'm going to read you guys a little bit out of the book, because I wanted to do these conversations on Sunday nights just because it's the start of the week. But I also feel like I need to be a little bit more intentional about sharing the book, and sharing why it was so important for me to write this. I've talked to so many women. I had the pleasure of going to a women's conference on Saturday under Jerry Godhigh. It was a beautiful conference titled Rediscover, Redefine Her. And there was amazing keynote speaker. It was a Monica Kaufman, that's been an Atlanta journalist icon here, and also the actress Kim Fields. It was a great time with women talking, and it was a good conversation. And I look forward to having Jerry on to talk about what she, you know, one of the things that she talks about at the conference. But I said to myself, you know, I've got to be a little bit more intentional. The reason I wrote this book was because I felt like it could help people. And so as I was talking to some of the women yesterday, and even talking to some of you after I posted a picture of my husband and myself, I see that there are so many people that really they're holding on to this glimmer of hope. But for some people, they feel like the glimmer is dying, right? And I was one of those people. That's why this is so passionate for me, because I really believe that when you believe something, it's easy for us to believe in things that we can see, right? But the Bible says that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So if you're having faith, and I think we don't know that definition now, right? We say, oh, I got to have faith. But do you realize that faith is believing something that seems impossible to the eye, right? It is the evidence of things not seen. So to say I know something is happening even though it hasn't, that takes a lot of strength, and I think it takes a lot of courage. But that is the very definition of faith. And so this channel is really to encourage you to have faith, that God could have a life. You can create a life for yourself that is what you truly want, and not just what you've settled for, right? And that's what this is about. So I want to read a little bit out of the book. If you haven't gotten your copy of the book, you can go to Amazon.com. You can go to Barnes and Noble. It's also at Walmart. There, you know, you can get the book anywhere. And for those of you that don't like to pick up a book and read, like myself, you can actually get the Kindle version, which allows you to have it on ebook. And we're actually getting ready to release the audio version of it this summer. So, but there's no excuse. You can get your copy of the book. So this is about lists, right? I said, his and her list. Is your desire for marriage based on your dissatisfaction with yourself? When you're self-reflecting, you may find that your ideal man's image was based on your lack of something. Maybe it was a lack of finances, a lack of love, or a lack of protection. Once you uncover what's truly on your list, you have to make sure that you are also what's on his list. A couple's views on marriage have to be aligned. So when I say that, I think that, a lot of times, I remember hearing this statement, and it really shook me up, because I wanted a guy that was, attractive. I'm a Libra. Libras are into things that are pretty. So it was important for me to be with someone that was attractive. And one of my mentors told me that the only people that really find attractiveness as important for women, not men, because men are a little different, are people that don't necessarily feel happy with themselves, right? So that's why you see a lot of gorgeous women that are very confident in their looks with men that are not attractive, because they that's not the place where they're lacking. You see a lot of girls that don't have a lot looking for a man that has money. A lot of times you'll see a pretty girl that doesn't have much money, and her entire focus will be a man that has money. She won't care how he looks. She will only care about his money. There are also people that did not have, they didn't get a lot of attention or love when they were growing up. A lot of times they are attracted to people that that do love bombing and are overly affectionate, even if it's to trick them or to manipulate them, but they're often susceptible to that. So you think about young girls that are taken advantage of, by guys that kind of have that pimp energy. A lot of times they grew up missing out on love, and they feel like they didn't get it. And so a lot of times what we want is based in our lack, right? And if what you want in your partner is based on your lack, that is a recipe for disaster, because really you are trying to find that person to make you whole. So if you're not confident about your looks, and then you want someone that's really good looking to make you feel better, the reality is that's not going to make you feel better about yourself. That's actually probably going to complicate things when you get this attractive partner if you don't feel attractive yourself. Even when you look at people that want someone that has a lot of money and is successful, later on they end up being resentful of that person, because sometimes the person uses that money to control them. And definitely, if you are looking for love because you missed out on love, and you end up getting with someone that makes you feel loved and makes you feel secure, a lot of times those people end up being controlling, and those relationships go bad. So I think you have to make sure that your desire is not based in lack, right? In your lack and your weakness. And in order to do that, you have to really, really come from a place where you've gotten honest with yourself. I say, before I began to work on myself, the lack of security in my life as a child caused me to yearn for a man to feel financially and emotionally secure. So when I was growing up, we moved. We had a huge sudden move, and then we were not around family, and so I grew up with just my mom and my brother. We didn't have cousins. There weren't people around us. And so I really, really I always wanted to feel secure, and I always wanted someone that had that side, So my first husband, he had a big family. His mom and dad were still married. So when I looked at his situation, it made me feel better about where I was lacking, but really I needed to fix those things within myself. I later found out that what a man could do for me wasn't enough. I wanted to be with a good person who was trustworthy. The healing work that I did made me realize that. I believe that you have to really work on yourself. And I know that sounds cliche, guys, but it's just true. You really have to do the work on yourself to understand, because even if you get an amazing partner, if you haven't done the work and you've got all these issues, I promise you it's going to be just like that mirror. And if you guys, next time you're in a hotel and there's that little makeup mirror that's on the side, pull that mirror out and see see what that looks like, looking in that mirror. That's that magnifying glass. I'm sure the ladies on here know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're not ready to look into that mirror and be comfortable and stand in it, then you really aren't ready for a relationship. But the beautiful thing is you can get ready for a relationship if that's what you want. Even if you don't want a relationship, I think it's important to have a beautiful relationship with yourself. And that's something I think that we work on our entire lives. I used to hear older women say, that it took them to get to their 50s or their 40s to where they got comfortable in their skin. And I always thought, Again, that sounds really cliche. But when I listen to social media, when I read things on social media and I listen to different things, you hear that there are a lot of people that are not self-aware at all. And when you're not self-aware, how can you expect or demand that someone else be invested in you when you really haven't done the work to invest in yourself? So that's what this conversation has been about. I didn't want to hold you guys too long. It's 30 minutes on a Sunday night, but I want to do these on a regular basis to get people really talking about what it means to, what is this whole thing when people say work on yourself or do the work? When I went on Iyanla's show, she said that was one of her catchphrases is do your work. And I remember thinking when I heard that, what does that mean? What does that mean? Everybody says, work on yourself, love yourself. We hear that all the time. But what does that look like? What does that feel like? Right. And so that's what these conversations are about. What does it feel like to love myself? How's that different if I, make myself look good, get myself up, work out, put clothes on, put makeup on, get my hair done? People think that means they love themselves. But the reality is when they don't do all that stuff, they don't feel as confident, right? At this point, we are in a society where people don't feel confident just taking a picture of themselves without a filter. You know what I mean? And so I'm not saying there's anything wrong with filters because I've used them as well. But what I am saying is if you can't look at yourself without the filter, that's a problem. What I'm also saying is that when you're in a relationship is you without the filter, right? That person is not looking through a filter at you. And so I think that a lot of us need to really kind of before we get into a relationship, figure out who we are and make peace with that. So by the time that other person shows up, it's like, if you don't like this, I'm gonna fail fast and keep it moving, right? Because I know what I'm looking for and I know what's looking for me or what I want to be looking for me. And if this is not it, then I'm not going to waste any time. I don't need to waste any time because I know what is for me is going to find me because I have faith in evidence and I have faith in evidence of things that are not seen, right? I believe in the evidence of things that are not seen, which is the definition of faith. So that is what this is about. Thank you so much, Colton and Tina Bree and everybody that tuned in for this conversation. I will be back tomorrow. Yes, you did find me, Gun Boss. You did. I will be back on tomorrow with conversations with the ladies from Bell Collective. And we are talking about this myth of the strong woman and what that means. And is that attractive to men? Why or why not? So make sure you guys tune in tomorrow at 8 o'clock right here for a reality check. And this is a special one because we're on assignment. It's a reality check over high tea with the ladies of Bell Collection. And I'm excited for you guys to see that. Bell Collective. So excited for you guys to see that. And then we have some great interviews coming up at the end of next week. Remember, it's okay to be picky as long as your pickiness is within standards, setting standards for yourself. And actually, it's not even really about being picky. It's really just about knowing who you are, what you want, and what you want to have. Bye, Colton. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys all for watching. If you're watching this later, make sure that you like and subscribe and make sure you hold some time out on Sunday night for us to have these Dear Alpha Female conversations. All right. I hope you all have a beautifully successful week, and I'll see you tomorrow night.